The New York Rangers right now are in a very bad spot with this team. We continue to lose games to not great hockey teams, and just in general are just not playing good hockey at all. As of late, this Rangers team has been honestly terrible, and I hate to say that as a Rangers fan. I really never want to be in a spot to say that, but if we're being honest right now with ourselves as Rangers fans, I think we can say that this team has been playing some insanely bad hockey. They look terrible out there on the ice, game in and game out. Even the win against the Habs there the other night when we scored that very late goal in the third period there to win it. That still wasn't a nice, clean win there, for example. So this Rangers team right now is in a pretty bad spot, but we do have some very good young talent on the roster right now, and also a lot of great young prospects, to look forward to in the future as well. Even a lot of guys who have a chance to really compete for a roster spot, next season going into 2025, 2026, that season there. We're going to have quite a few prospects on, both ends there, the defensive side of things and the, forward side of things. They're also kind of a net as well with Dylan Garand, who could start, slowly start really pushing towards a possible backup spot. And we'll see what kind of happens, going forward with the kind of backup goaltending spot. But the question I wanted to kind of talk about in today's video is whether or not the Rangers should go into a rebuild. And I wanted to talk about this because there are a few fans out there that have been commenting lately, whether or not the Rangers should or should not kind of go into a rebuild. So I figured we really kind of dive into that. I'll give you my thoughts. We can talk about it in today's video because, this is something interesting because, this Rangers team right now, we're not a completely, overall, bottom tier team in the NHL. Maybe right now, the last, 2 weeks, whatever, you could definitely say we've been arguably maybe the worst kind of team in all of hockey. That's definitely arguable. But in general, so far this season, if we're being honest, I don't think we've been obviously, like a bottom 2 or 3 team in the entire NHL. This is still a premier hockey franchise, the premier sports market in the entire world, being New York, the Big Apple there, Madison Square Garden, the most famous arena. So this team and organization is obviously not, bottom tier. So it is really tough for these sometimes big market teams in all sports to really kind of dive into a full-on rebuild, especially when this team is still going to be competing for a playoff spot for years and years now. I don't think this team, even in the foreseeable future, is really in a spot to be, one of those kind of bottom 5 teams in the entire NHL, to be completely terrible. So that does make things a little more difficult for the Rangers to actually, say, okay, let's full on commit to another rebuild, which we did only a few years ago. It wasn't terribly long ago when we got that message there, or the letter that kind of got sent out, whatever it was, saying pretty much officially the Rangers were going to enter that rebuild. That wasn't terribly long ago. Now, it was quite a few years, you could say, but it wasn't like a decade plus ago. So this team kind of rebuilt, fairly quickly as well. And that's the thing as well, is they didn't really, try and kind of take things slow. They went as quick as possible. And whether that was right or wrong, this is the spot we're in now. And at the time, I definitely was not a fan of, all the moves that were being made, going out there and trading for Jacob Trouba. I didn't mind the Panarin signing because I figured, if you can get that superstar guy, okay. Obviously, the number was, decently high, but, it ends up being a decent contract, obviously. Not an elite one, but the Panarin has been a good player for us. Whether you want to say he's been great in the playoffs or not really. But in general, as a player, he has, I would say, pretty much earned that contract, although playoff time, like I said, definitely there's been some blunders. But just in general, we came along pretty quickly in that rebuild there. And I think some of the moves that were made, by Jeff Gorton, ended up being pretty good and ended up paying off and stuff like that. And obviously not seeing Kaapo Kakko and Alexis Lafreniere, turn into those kind of superstar, first and second overall pick kind of guys, definitely hurt things a little bit there. Obviously that kind of slowed things down a bit in general for this team. We're starting to see both them really kind of turn the corner there. Obviously, Lafreniere had a big season last season there, ended up playing some phenomenal hockey, has continued that in this season so far, and, hasn't kind of taken that next step there, but obviously is still really good this season and has been one of our better players. And then Kaapo Kakko, he's been phenomenal, two-way, defensively and offensively this season, I think, producing at a very level at 5-on-5. So they're starting to come around there. And we do have a lot of other great young talent on this New York Rangers team. We also have guys like Will Cooley, who has truly turned into a kind of star-level player, honestly. He's great defensively, great offensively, produces at 5-on-5, which is great to see there. He's also a very physical player, one of the kind of top hitters in the entire NHL, so he brings a lot, still very, very young, and will continue to get better and develop. And then you've got guys like Filipino, who is still pretty young as well. He's obviously not too old. Adam Edstrom, Matt Rempe make an impact here and there on that fourth line. Rempe, not as much as Edstrom there, but Edstrom's been a pretty solid player. Berard, who just got called up, Brett, he's been pretty great so far in his limited sample size. He's someone to look forward to in the future. On the back end there, kind of some question marks. Obviously, Braden Schneider, I think, is a pretty solid defenseman. Not too bad. Hopefully, he can kind of take some steps forward there. Keandre Miller, he's a big question mark. Will he be on this team past this season? I don't exactly know as of right now. So he's kind of a question mark. Zach Jones, same thing. We'll have to wait and see what happens with them. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that I don't think this New York Rangers team will be going into an actual rebuild, whether us fans want to see that happen or not. With the way this team's built, we have a lot of really solid young players, obviously guys like Lafreniere, Kakko, Hedel, some really solid young guys, Braden Schneider on the back end. But you've also got that mix of older kind of guys who are in their mid to later 20s, even some around the kind of early 30s mark, guys like Vincent Trocheck, Adam Fox, presumably Igor Shesterkin, if that extension does get signed, where, those are some really big key players, star level kind of guys. Obviously, Adam Fox and Igor are superstar kind of guys. Vincent Trocheck's a great player as well. Having a disappointing season so far, but, still not too bad. Those are kind of guys who, presumably will be under contract long-term once Igor probably gets his deal. And, those kind of guys who can really help, be some great assets alongside our core young players like Lafreniere, Kakko, Hedel, Braden Schneider, those kind of guys as well. So I think with the young core that we do have, the older kind of guys in their mid to later kind of 20s there and early 30s, I think this team is probably just going to want to keep trying to compete in it for the playoffs and kind of do some little retools and little trades here and there. Hopefully we do see a massive trade still happen, but what I'm trying to say here is that I don't think we're actually going to see anytime soon that full-on rebuild where we're completely stripping things down from top to bottom there, trading off like every decent asset that's not for the future. I think what we're trying to do here is just probably continue on the pace that we're at right now, but continue to add pieces here and there in free agency and via trade to try and make this kind of team a contending team, obviously, once again, which going into this season, I think we were obviously, as of right now, maybe slipped back a bit, but I still see this team making the playoffs. I don't think it's going to be that bad, but this stretch of play has definitely been terrible and is definitely a little worrying for sure, but I think our playoff hopes are kind of fine right now. Obviously, if this continues, my mind will definitely change, but as of right now, we're obviously not in a great spot, but I still don't think we're going to go into a rebuild. Now, we very well might end up seeing a new general manager. And I would be more than okay with this if things do continue like this. If things stay anything close to this and we're not at least making it out of the first round in this upcoming playoffs, or if we don't even make it, then I 100% want to see Chris Drury fired. I think at this point here, he's been around for a while. He was assistant general manager under Jeff Gorton. Then obviously Gorton leaves. Drury gets hired there. And since Drury's come here, we have had some success. Sure, we've obviously made a couple Eastern Conference finals and stuff like that around, when Drury came on. So that was great and all, but at this point here, where things are going right now, and we know how this team is kind of built, and that's relying on Igor Shesterkin, who is not really Chris Drury's guy necessarily. He didn't, necessarily, scout him, and who knows exactly, but it's not like, he kind of really built under this amazing roster that helped kind of guide us all the way to 2 Eastern Conference finals. He kind of was just more around with this kind of core group of players here, made a couple moves on the outside to kind of, add in some pieces here and there. But for the most part, this team is not really completely Chris Drury's squad. Now, obviously, there are some pieces that are mainly his, but for the most part here, the main kind of core group of guys and the kind of top guy, Igor Shesterkin, aren't necessarily players that Chris Drury went out there and, got for us. So I think at this point, Chris Drury just hasn't really done enough to warrant, I would say, keeping his job after this season if things do continue like this. And I'll definitely have some videos, later on this season and into the offseason talking about, Chris Drury in this situation here. And I don't hate the guy. I don't think he's the worst GM in the world, but I definitely wouldn't say he's the best and wouldn't say he's top 5 or really even top 10 because I don't think he's built the greatest roster. I just think a lot of our playoff success has obviously come from a guy named Igor Shesterkin. And, when you have a goalie like that back there, he can really make up for some of your problems, which we still saw in the playoffs. The problems were still there, but Igor was bailing us out. So I do think this is going to be an interesting conversation going forward on whether or not Chris Drury should keep his job. If things continue and stay anything like this and we don't have a lot of playoff success, I would not be against seeing some change. Peter Laviolette, I don't really think is the problem, but if a new GM comes in, maybe we do see a switch up at the head coach spot as well. We'd have to wait and see, obviously, but I do like Peter Laviolette. I wouldn't mind keeping him going forward, but I also wouldn't be against, getting rid of Chris Drury, although, great Ranger and great, person seems like and all that kind of stuff there. In general, though, he hasn't done a great job at being the general manager of this New York Rangers team. And at the end of the day, that's his job, is to build a, contending roster. And he just hasn't quite done it. We relied too much on Igor. So I do think we need to see some big changes there. And maybe that big change is not just trading away some of these kind of core guys and getting rid of that Trouba contract, maybe getting rid of, Kreider, trading away K'Andre Miller, letting Lindgren walk. Maybe it is also some of those moves, but also, getting rid of, Chris Drury as well at the general manager spot and bringing in someone else, which, like I said, I would not be against at all. So I think with the way this team's built, we're not going to enter rebuild. We also do have quite a few really talented prospects who I am very excited to see what they can do going forward. In the AHL, Brennan Othman obviously is a talented player. He's been injured for a while now. I believe is expected to come back at the end of December, so at the end of this month. So hopefully he can kind of get back in form there once he returns and maybe gets called up at some point later on this season. Brett Berard has been a great player. Victor Mancini, when he's played, he's been solid. At the NHL level, hasn't been amazing. In the AHL's looked good, and he's definitely looked fine at the NHL level. I don't think he's been completely terrible. Put up some good point totals there. So we have a lot of really nice prospects. Dylan Rubrick, Adam Sikora, Brody Lamb's underrated guy, Noah Laba, Bryce McConnell-Barker. I have made quite a few videos, talking about these prospects and giving you guys updates and stuff like that. So definitely check those out. I'll have more videos in the future talking about these prospects as well, because I do think we have a fairly underrated prospect pool. Now, maybe that's my New York Rangers kind of bias there, and I'm just thinking that all these prospects are great because they're on the Rangers. Maybe that's what it is, but I do like some of these prospects a lot, especially Noah Laba, Bryce McConnell-Barker, Dylan Rubrick. Those are some very interesting prospects, and obviously guys like Victor Mancini, Othman, Berard are looking like some very talented guys who are NHL ready pretty much. So there are a lot of great prospects here. Some guys who are going to be further down the road as well. Gabe Perreault, he'll probably make an impact at some point, maybe at the end of this season, if not for next season there. Obviously Drew Fortescue as well. He's an interesting kind of prospect on the defense side of things there. So we have quite a few really talented prospects. EJ Emery as well, our first runner from this year. He's going to be quite a few years away, probably 2-3 seasons before we see him at the NHL level, but definitely could be a very good prospect. So just to kind of recap quickly here of this whole video, basically what I'm trying to say is, we have some decent young players on this NHL team right now. We also have some very talented prospects with some fairly high ceilings that are going to be coming in the next few seasons as well. We have a pretty big wave of prospects here who are going to be looking to make the NHL team, for the 2025, 2026 season and the 2026-27 season. So in the next two seasons here, we're going to have a lot of prospects looking to make this NHL roster here. We could see a lot of switch ups. I would not be against seeing Chris Drury fired if things do continue anything like this. I think Peter Laviolette's done a pretty solid job. I don't think he's necessarily all to blame, although you can definitely blame some of it on him for sure, with the way this team's played. But in general, I wouldn't blame most of it on him, that's for sure. And overall, I do not think this team is going to go into rebuild, although a lot of fans I know want to see a rebuild. I don't think it's going to happen because of the market we're in, the money this team will make, obviously, from still just doing what we do here and trying to make the playoffs, stuff like that. So I don't see any crazy things happening there rebuild-wise, but I do think we're going to see, hopefully, some big moves happen this upcoming offseason, and hopefully something decently sized trade or whatever happens mid-season here so we can get something going and really turn things around for this New York Rangers team, who has been very, very disappointing to begin this season. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. It helps out the channel a ton. I really appreciate it when you hit that like button. It helps me out a ton there. Does not affect what the Rangers do, unfortunately, but either way, it helps with the channel a ton here. Really motivates me to continue making videos, although no matter what, even if no one liked these videos, I would still make them because it's a ton of fun, but the support that you all show on these videos is truly amazing. I'm a Rangers fan like all you out there, and I really enjoy this community that we have here and we built because you guys are obviously all a part of this as well, and this is truly a great New York Rangers community. But thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one, and don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on the Rangers possibly going into a rebuild or not, because, that's obviously the more likely scenario in my opinion. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.